Hello and welcome to another episode of Wellness with EAC. I'm your host, Nicole Gwanzura, and I'm so excited to have you today. If you are new to the podcast, let me know how you found me. Welcome. So happy you are here. If you're coming back, thanks for coming back. What drove you back to be a part of this conversation again and again? As you know, if you're a returning podcast listener, on this side of the internet, we talk about career wellness. And so we are having conversations around balancing your mental health, talking about financial literacy, all with the goal of helping you develop professionally. And we're also going to talk about faith journeys because that's a part of my story. And I always am curious about other folks' stories. And then we talk about how that intersects with our personal and professional lives. Who am I? I am a mom. I am a wife. I'm an early career development consultant by trade. And I'm someone who's really passionate about women's ministry. And on this podcast, sometimes you get solo episodes where you and I are just chatting it up about some of the things you're excited about. And other weeks, we have guests. And today is one of those weeks. And I'll give you my disclaimer. One, the reason why I have guests is because I'm a curious human being, and so are you. And I want to demystify the things that people see on social media. You think just because you see how someone looks on the surface and what they're talking about, what they're posting about, you feel like you know them. You feel like you know what makes them who they are. And I want to go behind the scenes so you can see how folks navigated their journeys. And two, the goal of bringing guests is so that you can learn something from someone maybe that resonates with your journey, maybe something that is going to create an opportunity for you to continue to grow in your journey. And then lastly, I will tell you, I don't bring anyone on this podcast who I have not previously vetted, who we have not previously chatted, because I don't want you to hear this person, be really excited, and you go slide in their DMs or their emails and they're a different human. No, thank you. So I am putting the Nicole Gwanzura stamp of approval on each guest that you come in here with. Today's guest, I'm so excited. She has such an incredible story, an incredible journey, and the work that she's doing, of course, she's going to tell you more about. But I just want to hype her up real quick because Prisca Benson, she is a money coach at Our Green Life. And what's really awesome about her, she is a first generation Haitian American. Shout out to any Haitian listeners that are on this conversation, Haitian Americans. She did her nursing school program at Rutgers University. And y'all already know I go way back with Rutgers. I love working with Rutgers. And another fun fact about Prisca is that she loves to dance. She says all her stresses, worries, everything just fades away when she dances. So make sure when you connect with her, you ask her about that. But I'm going to stop talking. I want to turn it over. I want to hear a lot about Prisca. So Prisca, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. So tell the people about you. Love to know a little bit more about your background.
Yeah, so as you mentioned, I'm first generation Haitian American. I went to nursing school in graduated 2011. And from there, I made buku money mistakes, okay, that I did not even think were money mistakes at the time because I didn't know no better. And then when I got married to my husband 2 years later, he had funds available to him, and all my funds went to Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. So I was like, "Oh, tell me more." You know, it's the one thing that clicked finally for me that things could be different, things should be different. So then we
Mm.
started living just a more intentional life when it comes to money. And then even then though, years later, like around 2018, I was like, I still don't feel like my net worth looks like a nurse, you know, like I don't see all the zeros at the end of my net worth. And so I started listening to personal finance podcasts and really became like it really improved my financial literacy and took on the strategies that I could take to apply to my personal circumstances and was able to grow my net worth it was around 40K at the time, my investments, to almost 340,000 today. And so that's in about 6 years.
Wow.
And
Wow.
the beauty of it for me anyway, and why I think like I felt it was important to become a money coach, is because like it wasn't that hard. Things are not always it was simple strategies I used. It wasn't anything complicated. There was a lot to learn about the vocabulary when it comes to money, and then like getting comfortable trying the things that you learn. But once you do it and you create a habit, then
Mhm.
the growth comes. And I'm like, this is attainable for a lot of people, and I want to make sure people know that.
Oh, that is so important. Thank you for that. And I think one of the things resonating with me a lot from what you just said is you had to go out and learn. Like you saw there were decisions that you were making, and then there were steps, right? So you could have seen your husband have extra, and you could have decided, oh, I'm just going to spend the rest of our married life grumbling about the situation, how I will never get out of this, how he must be so lucky, how this, and that, right? Woe is me that has to
Mhm.
give Visa and MasterCard and everybody some money. But you made that decision to learn more, to educate yourself, because the circumstance in which you were starting didn't determine the outcome of where you were headed. Because I mean, 40K to 340K is incredible. And typically, there's some facets that also like some contributions, or I've heard financial folks talk about, oh, well, if you don't start investing at 18, then you're never going
Yeah,
to
yeah.
retire $1 million and you're never going to do this. So then you're looking at the clock and you're like, I've graduated, I'm in my early 20 somethings. It doesn't even look like I've got any positive dollars. But here you are, literally a living testament of that. No matter where you're starting, go
Absolutely.
educate yourself, get the resources you need. And I love that you're now doing that to help support others. Like you weren't a guru when you started.
Nope. But I am one of the things that my sister said to me in the last year, and I was like, you know what, this is truly a definition I feel of me, is that once I know something, I'm like, I want other people to know it. Like it's very
Yes.
important to me that, I bring value at all times, even sometimes not even on purpose, but I just really want to like make sure everybody has as many things as possible to succeed, because life is hard enough. There are a lot of things that are outside of our control, but the things we can control, we could take full control over instead of just giving it up to whatever, like the government or whatever other things we want to blame for it. Like
Right.
there are things we can do within that to like live a better life.
Absolutely, absolutely. And sharing that knowledge is one of the ways that that converts the conversation for a lot of folks, and it seems relatable, right? When they're talking to you and they're like, "Oh, you know what? Okay, you were in my position, right? You didn't all of a sudden be this like big expert, and you got some kind of bailout, or
Mhm.
you had to work for all of that." So I appreciate you sharing that. And of course, I mean, there's this major accomplishment of nursing school, which is not for the faint of heart.
Yeah, I've cried. I cried. I
Uh,
remember it vividly.
that I barely made it through biology. And then when I heard the things that were coming on the other side, my best friend is in the medical field as well. And she'd be like, organic chemistry and physics. I'm like, please
Not
go
for
ahead and
me.
skip past me with that. So you do that, and you're also, going through your career in nursing, and then you also are developing this journey and helping yourself get outside of a bad situation into a really good, financially fruitful position. So you can definitely reflect and say, wow, in the midst of my life, these are things that are really cool. I should be proud of. What about in this season right now? What in, let's say, even the last like 6 months are you looking at and saying, okay, you know what? I'm going to give myself a big thumbs up, pat on the back for this thing.
It's gonna sound a little different than people
Mhm.
might imagine, but honestly, it's my being a wife that was like, I don't, because it almost seems to me like I'm patting myself on the back, but it's being a good wife. And the reason
Mm,
is because we recently, and there was actually just an article in Business Insider about this, where my husband's income like drastically decreased in
Mm,
the past few years because of just, everybody's experiencing like these job
yeah.
shortages and stuff like that. And it was a lot. It was a lot. And the way I do things is different than how my husband would do them, which was a lot for me to deal with, okay?
Yeah.
Quite honestly. One of the things though, on two things, one is just the fact that because I love him, obviously, like I didn't want to bring him down or anything like that. So even though in my head that was very challenging, it's something I had to like battle back and forth with about like still respecting and still like just being in this marriage while at the
Mm,
same time taking on more of the financial responsibility. It was
yeah.
a weird balance, and I wasn't sure, honestly, if I would make it a couple of times through there. But fortunately, we have a good support system, good faith system. And so all those things helped to do that. Plus the financial habits that we created made
Hmm.
the tide a lot easier to handle. So I was honestly that's one of like the big things. I was like, wow, if this had happened, when I didn't have my money stuff together, like how disastrous this would have been versus
Yes.
this today. Like we were able to weather the storm and now we're on the other side. And I could be like, whoo, like I didn't bail.
That that's a big deal because when you look at the reasons why so many marriages crumble, finances are at the top of that list.
Yeah,
At the top of that list, and it's not always the experiences you both had were probably some of the most common because yeah, out of everything we just experienced, things are shifting, things are like just always on the edge. My husband works in the hospitality industry, so we were definitely on the edge all the last 4 years.
yeah,
But those challenges that come through really test like, okay, so are we going to do this?
yeah,
Okay, and what role do I play? But the key thing you said there is that you had the finances prepared, right? You had things prepared, um, versus, and you were willing, right? Because it's a partnership. Some
yeah,
folks will be like, well, you can't keep up with your 50-50 of the bills anymore, so I can go shopping, but you can't because it's my money, and
yeah.
my decision. You are less of a man because it's my money and I've got this, and this. And that's where a lot of problems
Oh yeah,
surface and
yeah.
explode.
And I definitely didn't want that too, because I think in general, I'm not saying this for all marriages, I'm not trying to like judge anybody else. However, like when you're in it, it's hard to see past it, right? But I
Yes.
feel like at least for me and my husband too, we've been through enough things that I'm like, there is going to be a pass. And I'd like to see that through. And it doesn't
Yeah.
happen if you mess it up in the middle, then it's going to be really challenging for it to look good on the other side.
Right.
Where we still have our love and our respect intact. So it was a challenge, yes, for sure, but I was determined to get to the other side.
Okay, you know what? That determined, because the other D is disciplined. You were disciplined to get to where you were, then you were determined. And I love that you get to see, the joy that comes in the morning after the storm. And I know, just as we're talking through, something that you're really proud of, and it's actually leans really closely into my next question because I'm curious if you have had a moment of adversity. I mean, this very much sounded like it, right?
Yeah, that
Because it's
was
on the other side. So I mean, continuing on that path, like, can you talk about an example of when you've faced some adversity and how did you overcome that and what did you learn from it?
yeah. So I would go back to that example in terms of adversity. I think it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. Um,
Mm,
honestly, like there's a lot of being raised Haitian American. I'm the first child of my family, so I'm very the boss. Okay, I'm very the boss.
yeah.
So there's a first of all, that's already like a thing with marriage, right? Where being wanting to be a partner with my husband instead of like the mom or like the leader, then that's always a balance. But then two, I think that like like seeing people in a different place you are psychologically, like you may think a certain way about something, like, oh, here's are all these opportunities you can explore,
Hmm.
and the person, like, you just don't know, like, feel like the efforts are just not the same as what you would want. And I think that's a very woman thing. I don't think it's just even me being first child thing. I think
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh, like do this, do this, do this. Like if this is not working, do this, do this. And then guys are just like, I'm gonna get to it,
Right.
and that was a lot. Okay. So I actually, any place that I could garner lessons from, it was like, it felt like it was coming from nowhere. I would listen to a podcast
Mm.
episode. I think there was one that was talking about like the mindsets of different people. Like some people are very practical, other people are dreamers. And like the
Yes.
way you speak to a dreamer is going to be completely different, and how they approach life is different. And I was like, I wasn't even looking for this, and that this came through, and so I left myself open to like learning how to better approach situation rather than from anger or frustration. I
Mm.
just feel like the patience and the empathy that I've learned from it is not only something I can continue to use in my marriage, but I could use that with my relationship with my friends and my family, and even with
Right.
clients, like really relating to like, hey, we don't all think the same. I can't treat this client like this client like this client. Like everybody needs their individual space and room to grow. And so I think all those like really helped me get us through this. I don't want to say just me, get us through it.
I love that. And can you give me an example of, when you told me a little bit about your work and just some of the things that you do because you're meeting clients where they are. Sometimes it's just like, hey, let's just do a quick sit down and assess everything that's going on and all of that. Or it's, hey, let's do some ongoing conversations. Can you give me an example of just how you've seen this more, I guess, level-headed approach and just kind of more well-rounded approach work for a client, or how you see that kind of translating in the work you're doing?
Yeah, so like I think, people first of all, when it comes to money, they already have the like anxiety about it,
Hmm.
automatically. No matter what my relationship with them is, they're already panicking,
Yeah.
right at the start. So just first of all, just acknowledging that for them, like, listen, I understand that this could be a thing. Like for me, it's nothing,
Yeah.
to me, I talk about money all the time. It's like talking about the air. Like
Yeah.
it's nothing for me. But to realize that other people will have a different experience in their own, money stories, those things will all influence how they come into the conversation. So it's like, absorbing that, like, and helping them to feel comfortable in that space. Like, listen, it's okay to be nervous, and then walking them through it rather than just like get over it, kind of thing. Like
True.
this is pen we need to get this thing. So I feel like it just creates a more like empathic space
Okay.
for my client, where they could feel like heard, and then I can move them into, the actual skill.
Okay. That is really important. And thank you for just noting that because I just also wanted to ask in the event that somebody is listening to this and they may be ready to have that conversation, but that mind mess is
Mm-hmm.
there, right? And you don't always know who to trust. That's the other thing. It's like, I'm going to go and open myself up to the most vulnerable. You're going to see my debt. You're going to see my mishandling of money. If you looked at mine right now, every time I look at my bank statement, I'm like, the goal every month is to spend less at Target. The goal every month is to spend less at Target. So now imagine somebody who's probably like all the way in the red, or they're just like, I can't even pay my bills, right? You're they're coming in their most vulnerable
Yeah.
state. So I really wanted to frame that because you've told me about your work. I've kind of seen that preview, but also just to help the listener who's unsure, like, would it be safe
Yeah.
to take that step, and what could that look like? And even if it's not with you, it gives them context, right? Of
Mhm.
like the person who I am vulnerable with needs to be able to acknowledge what I'm going through.
Yes. And I
So,
think too, it's helpful to the fact that I've had similar experiences. I didn't make like there are different kinds of coaches that do all sorts of different things. Some of them have always been good with money and had great situations, and that's awesome for them, no knocking it.
yeah.
But something about someone who did make the mistakes that you have experienced, whether it's as bad or as not as bad, but still they know what it feels like to make that error or what kind of mindset it took to make that judgment. I was like, I was just sharing with my followers on Instagram, like this Prime Day, right? This is the last day.
Hmm.
And I'm like, my living room used to be an Amazon warehouse. Okay. When Prime Day happened. Like, I'm
Yes.
not here to judge you for wanting to shop on Prime Day. However, here's what you can do to make the damage less, like make sure we're
Mm.
shopping on purpose. I'm not here to say you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this,
Right.
which is what
No,
most people are thinking that a money coach is going to tell them. And maybe there are some that will, but it won't be me because I want to help you create a plan that's sustainable and that you actually enjoy.
that's it. That's it. And a lot of times, many things you can buy with a good budget. Like
Of course.
you build in for that. And I was looking at the Prime Day sales as well, and I was like, okay, what do I really need? And I've been getting into the habit of putting it in my cart,
Mm,
and just letting it hang out for a little bit.
yes. Delayed
It could be
gratification.
$10,
Yep.
but I'm gonna let it hang out for a little bit because my impulse, I actually just today, I put something in my cart that I wanted to purchase. And then Amazon was like, you bought this last year. No, the year before. And guess what? I had bought it, had not returned it, had
Mm,
not used it, but here I
mm,
was trying to buy it again.
yeah. Yeah. You gotta love technology though. It called you out like nobody's business.
It called me all the way out. And guess what? I removed that from my cart. I didn't even save it for later. I
Yep.
deleted it.
Yeah.
And then when I plugged in the device that it said I had bought, I was looking for an external hard drive and I was going to buy the 1 terabyte. Turns
Mhm.
out I had a 2 terabyte.
Yeah. And that's
So,
like learning to be more intentional with our money. I literally like the shoes that were in my closet were like insane. I'm like, I don't
mhm.
wear none of these things. Okay. I
You,
don't wear
you wear
them.
the same three, right?
And now that I got foot problems, I wear my sneakers as much as possible and then dress shoes when I have to go somewhere dressy. And that's
Yes.
it. So it's
Yes.
like, but you learn these things, like we live in a consumerist society. So it always feels like, oh no, we need to get this thing. And the solution to fulfilling the need is to buy the thing. While
Hmm.
other things, like what you learn when you're in the personal finance space a lot, especially for someone like me, is like there are things like you may not use for another year. Maybe that's something you could borrow instead. Like
Right.
that alone could make such a difference in your finances.
Yes.
So those are the kind of
Yes.
things like I love to explore with my clients.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. And just for that practicality. And actually, speaking of things, this is purely a question for me. So I see a lot of nurses wear hokas.
Mhm.
Are they really that comfortable?
So here's the thing.
Okay.
So I've seen a podiatrist and they recommend, I'm not
No,
getting
tell me, because
credit for the
I'm also in
influence.
the market.
Yes. So Hokas are highly recommended. I see them everywhere in the
Yes.
hospital, everywhere. The other two brands that my podiatrist recommended was Brooks and Asics. And then
Oh, uh-huh.
what had me land on Hoka, despite the fact that they are more expensive than the other two, which was not my inclination, right? I did literally I tried all three of them. I give them a fair assessment, see how I felt about how it looked, how it felt on my actual foot. And Hoka so far did the thing. And I'm like, that's it. I'm a convert. I'm not even gonna bother trying to play around with all these other brands anymore. Now I
Right.
have a choice that I'm making every single time. That
Mm.
also makes it less complicated in terms of shopping. Like anytime I'm gonna need a pair of sneakers, I'm going to buy Hoka's and call it a day. Like I don't have to peruse and see what sales there are. It's just this is the shoe.
That's it. You know the style, you know the fit, you know the cut, you know how long they last you. Because I've been seeing that a lot, and I've been seeing a lot of nurses with them. And I was like,
Wait.
okay, are they really? I mean, if you want to know about people who stand on their feet
Mm-hmm.
and need to stay on their feet, go ask a recommendation from a
Oh yeah.
nurse
Yeah, they're amazing.
about the comfortable without absolutely hurting your feet. So thank you for answering that very personal question. For whoever else needs that recommendation, take it. But as for me, if I'm the only one who benefits from this, I am absolutely going to buy a pair now. If I find them on a good deal and make sure they are in my budget.
Yes.
So one of my last questions for you is what does wellness mean to you?
So one of the things I feel like my money journey has led me to describe wellness as is being able to make decisions without panicking,
Mm,
being able to make decisions like out of like more logically rather than out of fear or like anxiety. And so like
mm,
in getting my finances together, like for example, when I moved into this building that we're in 2015, they told
mhm.
us since then that there was going to be an elevator being built and that cost would come to us and like they would take a loan and we would have to give money. It literally did not happen until last year. Okay. So, but at that time, then they give you two options. And then you have like a month to make a decision on
Right.
this huge financial decision. And so at the time they say, like, listen, you can make one lump sum or you could do monthly payments, on top of your HOA fees. You can make monthly
Hmm.
payments. But when you added it up, like it was gonna be like 2 to 3 grand more if you did the monthly fees when you added it all together, because
Of
obviously it's a loan
course.
interest and all that. So, but because of the fact that we had set ourselves up, regardless of when this thing came, we were like, you know what? We prefer, this is a decision we got to make instead of like feeling forced to make a decision. Like we can choose one or the other. At the time, too, remember the husband's finances, on his end was iffy. It's like, is this
Right.
really, do we want to keep more money in our pocket today by doing the monthly? Or do we want to like take all that money out and then it's gone and it's done? We were able to sit down and make that decision without panic. We could think.
Mm,
I think the freedom in that is unreal. Like the
yeah,
anxiety levels in general are just so much lower. And in doing that, not only could you make your great decisions with your money, you could do that with any aspect of your life. It's one less thing like that's giving us all that mind warp and mind busyness.
that's
A
it.
bit more peace.
That's it. And you know what? Preparing for your future. But you have to prepare for the rainy days.
Oh
And
yeah.
even if it's not coming right now, just knowing you have that nest egg when so one of the things I love, okay, in my leisure time, my favorite thing to read is Money Diaries on Refinery 29. Have you ever read them?
So
Oh my goodness. So they're really good, and I think you might find them interesting. So essentially, Refinery 29 interviews people anonymously and it'll ask them the same set of questions like how much do you earn? How much do you get by monthly? What bills are you paying? Do you owe any money? And then it'll ask, was college a big conversation in your family? Have you ever gotten an inheritance? So everybody gets the same set of questions. And then it'll walk you in a week of that person's life.
mm,
And so you see how they spend money, how they make money, anywhere from like, broke college students to physicians making buku dollars.
yeah.
So I find it so fascinating to see that some of the people, when they're spending their money, it may seem like a lot, but when you look at what their expenses are, how they manage their money, they're prepared for that. And a number of them are not coming from wealth.
Hmm.
They just adequately prepared and they invested in this, they did that. But Money Diaries is one of my absolute favorite because then it goes into the in-depth of what's going on with the money. Also, like salary transparency and the videos, but you only see a snippet. But this walks you through how you're preparing. How are people preparing and how are people not preparing?
Yeah.
And maybe in a cycle for a little while longer.
That just reminds me of like one set of like kind of similar but not anonymous thing I like to follow is I Will Teach You to Be Rich podcast by Ramit Sethi. And
Yes.
I
Uh-huh.
see like couples that have all sorts of backgrounds financially, and seeing like how the stories that they like that come up like are so varied. Like regardless of how rich or poor they are, majority of
Hmm.
them have a good amount of money, but they're still just not managing it well. And
Yeah.
some have managed it well and they still feel scarcity. So it's like all these things that we think is so like unique to us, like, oh, that person can't relate. You really don't know.
That's it.
So I think that when people watch these things or experience these things, just knowing like you create the story you want to, like we
Hmm.
all come from somewhere. We have to deal where we come from, but we can
Yes.
change what the future looks like. And nowadays we have so much more opportunity there's certain things, especially with the world coming more on the internet, there's a lot of things that we can't be limited by anymore,
Yeah.
especially for people of color. Like nobody has to look at you for you to invest, and decide that you're not worthy of investing. You can go do it with your daggone self. So like
Absolutely.
it's a blessing to be able to at least look at these opportunities like that we have nowadays and also impart it onto others, because the more we get to know and we get to understand, like we can get everybody else on that train.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate your insight. And I'll link the Ramit's podcast as well as Money Diaries, Salary Transparency, CNBC Make It, I think is
Yeah,
another
those are
one
good. Those are
too.
great series too. I need to make
Oh,
myself get on that because that is the show.
you
Okay.
need to get on there,
I
honestly.
love their stories.
Oh my goodness, you need to because I mean, yeah, the stories are just so, so good. So I'm going to put all those links. And because I promised the audience a podcast episode on financial literacy, I'm putting all the links because look, finally, finally, I'm giving the people what I promised.
Yeah.
Prisca, how do folks get in touch with you?
So if you're an Instagrammer, I'm there at Our Green Life NJ. If you are a LinkedIner, just find me, Prisca Benson, right there. I also, my email list is full of tips on mindset, practical strategies on how to, deal with your day-to-day expenses, and also a little bit just getting that literacy going about like, investing, because I'm like, that is the only way to build wealth. What you invest in is up to you, but investing is like mandatory if you don't want to be 70 and working at McDonald's. Okay. So, so those are the things. Unless that's what you want to do. If that's what you want to do, do it. Okay? Just saying. Just saying.
Like, can it be volunteer work and not the money to keep
You
your
know?
lights on?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yes, let's just go because you love the clown. And yeah. Okay. On that note, Prisca, thank you for being on the show. I mean, like I said, I promised the audience a conversation on money and financial literacy, and you delivered and then some. The relatability. And one of the things, y'all, that motivated me to ask Prisca to be on the show is as someone who works in healthcare, and then she's also telling you about the money, like there's a unique perspective in that combination of really understanding. I mean, she knows everything from your vitals to the impacts of things, to seeing the transformation of what happens to you inside and out and up here too,
Yep.
when you get your money right, when you are budgeting, and she's giving that gift back to the world and giving it back to you. So Prisca, I cannot thank you enough for sharing so much of your knowledge on the show today.
Thanks so much again for having me. I totally appreciate it. Oh, one other thing I wanted to mention, if you
Yeah.
go to my bio in my Instagram, Our Green Life, there is a 3-step guide to financial freedom. And those are the first 3 steps I feel like kind of started my journey into financial freedom. And it's like the little things you could do, even if it's a little bit today, as you continue to build upon it, will get you there.
Oh, that's key. That's key. Y'all need to grab that because then the next question you're asking is how do I start, right? Start there.
Yep.
Start with that form. Start with those steps and we'll link those in the show notes. And if you want to see Prisca and I face to face, head on over to YouTube to watch the video version of this podcast. Leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other episodes going forward. If you are on your drive and heading into work, or you're like me and catching up on podcasts while you're cleaning up the house or doing some laundry or something like that, then catch us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on Listen Notes. I mean, if you just actually Google Wellness with EAC, there's so many places that are going to match the platform to the app that's on your phone. So thank you again so much, and I will see you again next Wednesday. Until then, take care and be well, everyone.